Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, lax rats alike, welcome back to another episode of the Crease. We are joined here by two-time national champion, three-time All-American, former professional lacrosse player, the founder of Class Lacrosse. He hails from Baltimore, Maryland. Deemer Class. Deemer, thank you for coming on, brother. And how you doing today?
Doing great. That was an electric introduction.
Listen, I got to welcome you with some love. You know, people are looking for some good guests to come on here, and I feel like we've had a pretty good lineup so far, and it doesn't get much better than Deemer Class coming on the podcast. You know, doing my research and just watching you growing up, it's always cool to have a legend like you on. So I'm excited to dive into some lacrosse.
Yeah, appreciate it. Excited to chop it up. We're looking forward to a great quarterfinal weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before we dive into those games, which we will be doing, I really want to pick your brain about like the current state of lacrosse. I want to dive into your Duke career. An unbelievable career from start to finish, you know, starting with 2 national championships and just a storied career from there on out, playing with some unbelievable legends. I kind of had a question right off the bat for you. What was it like, you know, when you were playing with Miles Jones and you guys were both receiving long pulls at the midfield line for Duke? And did you ever expect that to kind of happen at any point in your career?
No, I think it was definitely interesting. I think we were going in, I remember specifically our sophomore year. That was when we were going into the season, you know, both coming off of freshman years that we contributed, but there was a lot of question marks in the media around like who would replace Dave Lawson, Josh Offit, Jake Tripucka, and then Christian Walsh, who, you know, we always called the glue guy, who was the, you know, senior that, you know, really led us in the right direction that year, sophomore year. And then, you know, Miles and I, it took us probably 7 or 8 games to start to see some shots fall and a lot of like perseverance and working through some early season up and downs. But yeah, I mean, it was a great sign of respect. It was something that, you know, it was cool to see hard work paying off, but we were really hungry, really motivated. You know, we played with a chip on our shoulder, and we like to have fun celebrating and get fired up. And it, you know, was certainly, I think, a great launching point that season. But, you know, I think there was times where we got double pulls. There was times where, you know, teams went back to short sticking me to try to make me more of a dodger, you know, because I think when you do that too, like when the ball's in your stick more, like you can always slide to a guy, but if you choose to not slide, then it kills the flow of the offense sometimes, you know. So that was always like a challenge for me, you know, in terms of like handling some of that. But yeah, it was an exciting run.
I love that. What's the one thing you miss the most of playing at that level in college? That just the highest of high levels. You know, you're at Duke University. You're playing the best of the best. You're on teams that have been to national championships and won national championships. What's the one thing you miss from that you just can't really get, you know, coaching and doing as much as you are with the game right now?
I mean, I think going off that, and we actually, you know, when we've interviewed some college players on our podcast, it always brings up these memories of you grow up and you dream of playing on the biggest stages. And, you know, I can think about going to games at M&T, like the 2010 Duke-Virginia game comes to mind where, you know, Crotty feeds Quinzani in that semifinal. And so, you know, growing up as a kid in Baltimore, I was always dreaming of these moments. And then when you get to the schools, you know, the rivalries are so intense, you know, and there's so much passion that goes into these games where if you lose, you feel like, man, like everything's crumbling around you and it feels so personal, you know, because you put everything. So like, I think like to answer your question, you know, just the intensity and like the pride and passion that goes into like those games and the buildup of all week, you know, prepping for a Notre Dame or a North Carolina or a UVA, and then getting to just be a part of that is, you know, it's I feel like impossible to replace, and just getting to do that as a player, super super grateful for those experiences.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I appreciate it. Just I did a little deep dive on you. I tried to reach out to some sources who may have some info on you that I might not have. I did learn that you had the green light at Duke to shoot sidearm and underhand, which I believe at the time, I don't know if it still isn't an easy light to get. How did it feel to have that light? Like you can tie that into how important do you think it is for kids to work on those multiple release points?
Yeah, it's I remember my freshman year, I hit like a sidearm shot against Maryland in a man up. I mean, we got killed in that game, but I think from early on I was able to show that I had some potential there. And there's always just this hard rub of, you know, like earning your spot, but until you do that, like how do you take enough chances to like get there?
Hmm.
And I think my freshman year, one of my biggest regrets was, playing in 20 or 21 games. I think I only took 29 shots. And my only regret that year was not being aggressive enough. And then sophomore year, it evolved, and when we graduated, those guys like Coach Caputo, who was our offensive coach, was like, hey, like we need you to shoot 6 to 8 shots a game to have success.
Yeah.
And so getting at least that more thumbs up of, okay, like the team needs me to be more aggressive shooting the ball, I can do that. And then from a sidearm underhand point, I think the coaches knew I was putting in a ton of time on it. I was having some success, whether it was practice or some games. Like, I think they were willing to be like, all right, like if he's capable, he can take some of those shots, and they better go in. If you're not scoring them consistently, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
And so I think from there, like that was where I was able to, you know, push the boundaries a little bit. But yeah, it's like it wasn't everyone. Like you had to earn that leash, earn that green light, and then when I got it, it was something I was took a lot of pride in too, because I wanted to prove them right, and
Yeah.
make it look like they were taking a good chance on me.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And of those 4 years at Duke, I might be putting you on the spot here, but you got to choose one guy, to have your back in a bar fight. You're going to war, whatever it might be. Who's that guy for you? It has to be one of your Duke teammates.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a lot of guys, but the one guy that really sticks out for me is Will Hawes. He's actually the head coach of my alma mater, Loyola, Blakefield High School, and he was just a guy that it stands out to me a lot too, because he was always in my face during practice. Like freshman year, we were line mates, but then he got moved to D mid, and he was always in my shit.
Yeah.
He was always in
Yep.
Miles' shit, really pushing us. But you knew it was out of love, and then he was the nicest guy off the field. But when I think of a guy that is just so competitive and you would just want to go to battle with, like it would
Yeah.
be that guy.
Just someone who's just always going to have your back.
He's gonna have your back, like cares about you, but is not gonna back down from anyone, and hates losing more than anything. And so he's a guy that really stands out. But I think he was a year above me. But when I do think back to freshman sophomore year, there's a lot of guys in those senior classes that were what we called at the time foxhole guys. Like if
Yeah.
you were stuck in a foxhole, those were some guys that you wanted on your
Yep.
side.
I love that. And I know you were very particular about your sticks. You were big on stringing your own. Did you ever let the sidewall Jedi touch any of your sticks?
I It's a good question. I feel like he might have like once or twice, but I was extremely particular, and it kind of started in high school. My friend TJ Neubauer played at Fairfield. He got so lazy about stringing them for me, and I was like, dude, here's $20, here's 25. Like, didn't give a shit. Wasn't gonna, just string them. He was just being lazy about it. And then I started learning how to replicate some sidewall patterns, but I didn't always do them how I liked. And then Josh Dion was really helpful in college. Like he would string me some, but then I can't remember what year I finally found a pattern that I liked, and then Greg Keneally, ECD Greg, starting I think junior year, maybe sophomore year. Like actually, we would ship him down, and he would string up a few, and he started crushing it for me. So that was who I ended up really handing the keys over to.
I just want to confirm for anyone watching, you might be able to see this. For those listening, I'm about to show a picture on the screen. Does this look like something that might have been yours back in the day?
Yes, for sure.
Exactly. So I'm not super knowledgeable about stringing and sidewalls and everything that goes into it. I was always put my faith in a teammate, put my faith in someone I know that can string, and if I like it, I'm good. And so when I was doing my deep dive on you, some of your Duke teammates were walking me through patterns and sidewall patterns, and I said, listen, I can't ask them about the patterns if I don't know them. There was some SIs and some ones and zeros and all sorts of stuff. So maybe another time we'll dive real deep into that after I do some research. But I wanted to put my hand up to make sure everyone listening knew I'm not as in tune with my stick as someone like Deemer was. So.
Yeah,
But
and it's
great
funny
respect.
because in terms of the different interlockings, like I knew enough to be dangerous, but I couldn't always make all the tweaks that were like the next level. Like, oh, I'm gonna like this, I'm gonna like
Mhm.
that. I just when I felt something that I liked, like I knew it, and then there could be sticks that were strung the exact same way, but the break-in process came out differently, and then I
Mhm.
couldn't use the stick. Like
Yeah.
I just, you know what, I had to retire this one, and I think that was also where the wax mesh was evolving.
Yep.
Like the string king mesh was evolving, ECD mesh. There was the throne mesh. I think was like that waxy. Like
I think
just
so.
before ECDs came out, and but sometimes whether if it was white versus colored, it would be a little crustier, and they just didn't feel the same. So like there was just times where some sticks I could ride out for a while, in terms of playing with for a good bit, and then some I I'd string it and then I never would touch it.
I just like the idea of you putting in like a good bit of time getting the stick ready, putting it together, and you go out on that field, you go to hit the wall, whatever it might be, and you're just like, no, this isn't the one. Just immediate retirement.
The
And that's
pocket
the
never got there. It was it either would get cut out, and we definitely had an embarrassment of riches of sticks and strings at
yeah.
school.
I think that's the luxury of going to a school like Duke rather than a school like Cabrini University where you might get one stick a year. You'll be lucky if you get mesh with it, if we're being honest. Colfer, Coach Steve Colfer, he always promised us, tons of sticks, whatever we needed, and then season comes around and everything's back ordered. People are having, they're going to Lacrosse Unlimited, they're going to people's houses to get them strung, whatever it might be.
At
But
the
no,
end of the day, you just need one, though.
you
You
need
don't
one.
just
Listen,
need
we had
one.
enough of them to field the team, and it worked out for the best at the time. So as long as you can go out there and play, for anyone out there, just get out there with that one stick. You got to earn the luxury to have 27 retired sticks before you practice with them one time. If just a hypothetical for you, you're doing a lot of coaching and training, and you've been so involved with the game. When that time comes where Coach Danowski steps away from the game, whether it's in 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it might be, you got a call from Duke University. Are you answering that call and entertain the thought of going back, or are you sort of hell bent on your first class lacrosse over everything till the day you die?
Oh, I mean, if I got that call, I would 100% entertain it. I mean, I think it's a amazing place, amazing opportunity, and it would be a true honor. I love what I'm doing. I think Duke would be the only place that I would move on from what I'm doing now to look at. So that it is, it's an interesting hypothetical, but the in the men's game, there's so many
Yep.
incredible coaches who have put in years of just sharpening the axe of the coaching profession. I'm just excited to keep learning from all those different guys, trying to support the best I can.
I love it. Listen, you're an honorable guy, Deemer. You're an honorable guy. We'll dive a little bit. We're gonna dive into everything first class, everything you guys do right after we talk about the games here. But for anyone who doesn't know or isn't familiar, Deemer founded First Class Lacrosse. I'll give him the floor here just to speak on it before we dive into it. But for anyone who's listening and isn't aware of what we're referring to, Deemer, if you just want to give him a quick background, then we'll dive into some games, and then we'll do a deep dive on First Class. Actually, no, we'll just do the deep dive now. We're already here. I like to jump around. So the floor is yours, Deemer, First Class Lacrosse founder. I'd love to hear how it got started and everything like that.
Yeah, it's a fun story. I left. My story is in 2016. I worked in finance for 1 year. I wanted to keep playing. I was so out of shape. So that was kind of this thing that I convinced my parents that leaving this good paying New York job to try to play professional lacrosse and do some training would be a good idea. And it started as small group player development with Ryan Brown. Him and I trained together, and it was branded RBDC back in the OG days. And I 2017 hit it full time, and my favorite thing I like to point out to people, like just for who are getting started or trying something, you just got to put the time in. And I went to 40 cities that year doing clinics, 25 states, 40 cities, clinics and trainings, and then rebranded to First Class Lacrosse when Ryan moved on to the club space and to a different career, and then it's grown since. So it's been going on 7-8 years of FCL. We now run camps, trainings, and showcases. That's been a huge part of what we do. We do weekly trainings in 5 different markets. And then we have been doing more on the, advising and recruiting process side of things. And then I would say the third bucket of what FCL has become is media. And, it really started with, social media, just Instagram and posting drills and content and breakdowns. And it's evolved to, some game coverage and, some recruiting evaluations. And, we have some online communities, and we're creating a lot of content. And we launched our podcast for the first time last fall, which was fun to get started. And so that's been our journey. And so now we're focused on building a great team of, guys and girls and coaches that, are very credible, but also, really invest in, the players, and the teams that we work with. So it's been fun to build the team.
That's awesome. Just for everyone listening, what's the name of your guys' podcast?
So it's called the FCL podcast, the First Class Lacrosse podcast, and it's across all the podcast venues and YouTube. So we did a coaches series in the fall with a lot of great men's and women's coaches, and then we've been doing every Friday in season. So it's been exciting.
That's awesome. Listen, if you're a lacrosse junkie out there, and if you're listening to this, you're a lacrosse junkie.
No doubt.
You gotta tap in over there.
I'm getting Matt. It's funny. Like some of my OG, like hardcore, dads of some kids I train. They'll hit me with, "Hey, did you catch Dixie's podcast? Did you hear that on the Crease dive? Like, already listened to your one on First Class Lacrosse." I'm like, man, you guys are hitting 6 lacrosse podcasts in a week. That's the hardcore niche right there.
Those listen, I love the young guys that come up to us at games and bars and stuff like that, but the true junkies and the true people that love the game are the dads that come up to me and they say, "Oh, I listened to your podcast," or "I saw you here on Instagram." And just knowing that people like that who have been around the game for so long are still just taking in as much as they can, it just kind of goes to show just like how, one, small the lacrosse was, and two, just like how much fun it is to watch and be around, no matter how old you get. And I know Jordy and Dukes, when they're on, they always refer to them as just lacrosse sickos, and it's true. I like to indulge in a lot of lacrosse content. I like to take in as much as I can, but I know for a fact there's guys out there who are just taking in so much more than me, and it's always cool to see. Running first class and running that, what challenges have sort of come up for you just on like the business end in general when you started running your business there?
I think one of the biggest I think it strikes a chord probably with a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space is you only have so much time and bandwidth. So, the name of the game is figuring out, what's the best return on your time, and it doesn't just mean from a monetary perspective, but just all the functions that go into running a business and building a brand and creating content. You're always trying to be more efficient, but there's only so many hours in a day and a week. As I've, gotten a little older here, I'm trying to think about, well, how can I make this sustainable? How can I, be more efficient with my time and the tools that we use? I love being on the field, but I can't be on the field 9 hours a day, every day, because then then it takes away from content, and now we're building a team, and I'm learning to be a better leader and managing the team a bit. And my partner Matt Dunn has been a huge help in that area as well, and it's been huge having him on board. So I think there's been some exciting, natural growth in those along the way, and it's always, I think the other big one is just always trying to raise the bar of the experience and quality that is provided. There's a lot of great events out there. There's a lot of great coaches out there, and just the challenge of trying to differentiate yourself and provide a good product every time out on the field. I think those are a couple that really come to mind that are always something I'm thinking about and trying to improve at.
Yeah. And speaking of just like being around, the recruiting world, I'm sure when you were getting recruited, similar to when I was growing up, it was the Wild West. You were playing games in 8th grade and going into high school, and the sidelines were lined with coaches. You're talking to everyone at tournaments. They're texting and calling every kid under the sun. And now it's a little bit more structured and it's different. And I think that's awesome for the game of lacrosse. I think it's better for the growth of the players and just letting kids grow up a little bit before making extremely large life decisions. But for the kids out there that might be listening or see this clip if it comes out on Instagram, what's the biggest mistake you see kids making during the recruiting process?
It's a really good question. I think a huge thing that comes up in the recruiting process is, kids not prioritizing their bodies, and signing up for too many things. It's really hard, I think, to be selective when it comes to events and things that you're committing to. But there has to be a level of trusting the process that goes with, okay, I'm only going to be out at these events, and these are the things I can commit to that will allow me to perform at my as close to 100% as possible. I'm going to go ball out at those, as opposed to let me just sign up for more things and hope I get more exposure. Because I think there is a diminishing return to that, and it can certainly impact negatively your process. I think that's a big one that just keeps coming to mind, because it's really hard with, there's events every day of the summer now, and you have to be judicious when it comes to, selecting those. I think kind of maybe hitting more towards the mid to tail end of the recruiting process is just, how outcome oriented are you versus how process oriented you are. And what I mean by that is the kids that I think are having success in the long run, are very process focused and very focused around getting better. Mm-hmm. And they're very curious about the game. Like they love lacrosse. They are stalking YouTube. They know what guys are doing. They can reference, that backhand was from Lyle Thompson, 10 years ago, or whatever it may be. And that's inspiring and helping push their games forward versus, players who I think get too wrapped up in what everyone else is doing, who's committing where, what happens if I don't commit to this one school that I'm really trying to commit to. I think people lose sight of the bigger picture, and I think that leads to burnout. I think it leads to, um, kids putting less time into their games after they commit, which I think can impact, what impact they're going to make at the college level. And we kind of hear those examples a lot, like, oh, the work begins now, like once you commit, but who actually lives that and breathes that, I think, is a separator.
Exactly. We're listen, guys, for everyone listening, we got Deemer for 10, 15, maybe 20 more minutes. He's going to slide off eventually. And I know some people want to hear just your thoughts about the current state of the game and where it's at. So just anything this past weekend, week one of the NCAA tournament, that stood out to you the most, or anything that maybe surprised you, or maybe something you saw coming and everyone said you're crazy. So whatever might have stood out.
Yeah, I mean, I think a huge standout for me from the weekend is the Richmond victory. I view them as a program that Coach Shamati's been building from the start, and has had fantastic wins, even dating back to my senior year. Richmond defeated us on the road midweek, and they're a program that has just been like knocking to like break through.
Yep.
And seeing a non-traditional school like that break through, I think that always needs to be celebrated, because I think that really shows that our game is expanding. And, while there's, only 74 Division One schools, recruits and kids seeing that, hey, I can go to a lot of different places, be competing for conference titles, and then it's time to dance.
Yep.
So I thought that was really cool, coming out of the weekend. I can't say I'm surprised about Notre Dame, winning. They've been this, sleeping giant. They had a couple guys that are two of their top offensive players not participate in fall ball. They're dealing with the loss of basically, two or three, All-American Tewaaraton finalist type guys. And, now they're, maybe finally putting it all together to make another run. But yeah, I mean, storyline wise, like I'm excited to see some of these quarterfinal games and see if hey, can Syracuse get back? They've been up and down, so
Yep.
that's been one that's thrown a lot of people for a loop too. Like how good are they, and are they going to show up?
Yeah, I have for the Cuse game this weekend. I have Cuse winning, but it's a little bit of me, my rooting side coming out there. I've just been on, like, I've liked that offense since Spallina got there. I kind of love that people like to just talk so much shit on Spallina, and I just think he's so good. And it's like, I feel like we're watching like different people play lacrosse. And I think sometimes people just hate just to hate, so it makes me want to root for him and Syracuse even more. But I do think, running into like a team like Princeton is not, it's not a game where I'm like, oh, Syracuse has the edge here. It's sort of going to be, in my opinion, like a shootout. Which goalie's going to step up more? We know both offenses are going to be humming. And I really do think it's going to come down to like a battle of the tendies. Like it's not going to be who has the most saves. It's who's going to break less. Who's going to steal the one they need to steal on a one-on-one save. As a goalie myself, I was a big believer in like you can let in 10, 12 goals in a game, but if you can steal one or two back on a 3-on-2 or a 2-on-1, that's one that everyone thought was going. That's a momentum starter. You kept one off the scoreboard, and most of the time, when you steal one like that, if you're an odd man down like that, you got people up top. You're going the other way quick. So I'm excited to really see that matchup. Is there anyone in particular outside of, everyone loves to watch CJ Kurse. I rave about him as much as I can. Is there one guy that you just like love to watch that's left in the quarterfinals that you think might be good for, kids to watch and really analyze their game?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say, I love watching Aiden Carroll. I did not love what he did to Duke last weekend, but I view him as just a really dynamic hybrid type of guy, and it's cool to hear like his leadership story. In terms of, being a guy that is like 2-year captain now, I think, and he's back, like, really willing that team to victory. I think he's a great study. I really think Nate Kabiri is fantastic. And I think deservedly so. Like McAsee is, Thornton finalist and really getting that shine as a senior and has had an incredible season. But I think Nate has a lot of really like intriguing subtleties to his game. Like his change of speed, and he's also a guy that doesn't dominate the ball. But he's really effective in a lot of different ways. And so I think there's like a lot of good things kids can pick up from watching him play.
I love it. And then we touched a little bit on Notre Dame. They got Penn State this weekend. How do you kind of see that game shaping out, or who do you think's really got the edge there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't. I personally like. I see Notre Dame winning. I don't. I don't know that. You know, Penn State's going to have enough juice to really get a far enough lead on a
Mm-hmm.
Penn State or sorry on a Notre Dame. I think I'd imagine Sean Light covers trainer. And I think again unless like other guys like I think it's is it Wallstrom? Luke Wallstrom inverts a
I think so.
lot
I
for
believe
Penn
so.
State unless he can like really start drawing rotations and trainer can feast off of ball movement. I think that's going to be a matchup that gets neutralized a bit. A guy like Aquino as a freshman, how much is he gonna step up in that moment? That's a lot to ride
Yeah.
on. A dominant freshman when you have this like seasoned team. And I was talking about it on our podcast too. I just when I look at someone like Will Lynch at the Face-Off X, like he's just such a gamer, and
Hmm.
he's a big game gamer.
Yeah.
And I think like again, Penn State's got a strong face-off unit, but a couple of younger guys that again trying to unseat a really seasoned vet that's been in the big moments in the quarterfinal game. I could see Lynch. I think back at home in Long Island, I could see him,
Yep.
really making a big push at the face-off X.
Yeah, I think I've always said all year that I do think this Notre Dame team can go win another title, but I certainly didn't have them as like my favorite. Like you mentioned, they were missing offensive guys in the fall. I thought that offense at times this spring was kind of going through lulls during games. 10, 15 minutes, scoring one goal, maybe sometimes zero, and that's just unlike Notre Dame teams we see in the past. However, they're waking up, and they're waking up at the right time. Where if Penn State can't produce one of those lulls where they hold them to maybe one goal through 20 minutes, then it's going to be hard for Penn State to keep up with that Notre Dame offense, and or it's going to be hard for that Penn State offense to keep up with the Notre Dame pace. So I also have Notre Dame in that one for a lot of the same reasons you do. But that's
Another one I think is going to be interesting is Maryland Georgetown, and
yeah.
where what I think is a fun storyline in that game is when I think of Kevin Warren being a former assistant of John Tillman, I kind of view it like this Nick Saban analogy,
Yep.
where Tillman's got again some of these former guys, and not a lot of his former assistants are like maybe at all these top programs. I don't know exactly, his tree as well, but I know he's had some, assistants, like Kevin that have gone on to, coach different programs. And when you think of Tillman being this, May mastermind of strategy and scheme, and then you got someone like Warren he's trying to crack through the quarterfinals for Georgetown. I think that's going to be really fascinating how those teams match up. I think they're
Hmm.
pretty even across the board. Like they play pretty methodical style, and who's going to get the best of that game planning and scheming.
I love that. I'm not I'm looking forward to that matchup because I've had Maryland as my sneaky Final Four team the whole year. I'm just so high on Logan McNaney in big games. Some people's knock on him is he's up and down, but at the end of the day, if you can show up in the biggest of moments and you're going to have a couple maybe not great games in the regular season, but still put together an overall great product, and then when those lights shine bright, you're never shying away. That's a goalie that I know that team can get behind, and with that defense, I am worried about potentially another Notre Dame Maryland championship. but I just think Maryland is just inevitable in May. It's one of those things where I don't necessarily root. Like I don't have. It's not like Syracuse where I'm like I want them to win. It's just sort of one of those things where I'm like I know they're gonna win. Like the Chiefs and the Patriots when they've been going through their runs, where you're like, I don't hate them, I don't love them, but like they're gonna win. Kind of no matter what happens, they're gonna win. So that's sort of how I feel about that Maryland Georgetown game. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on. The storyline you mentioned. And then we got Cornell Richmond. We spoke about Richmond's big win. I'm a a huge Richmond Spider fan. One of my best friends from home, Timmy Adams, played 5 years there. Like you said, they've always been knocking. They've beaten teams, great teams. They've lost to teams and heartbreakers. To see them get over the edge last week was really cool. I know a group of alumni flew down together and were boots on the ground in North Carolina for that game. So, I'm happy for the Richmond faithful, and I've been on board since 2018, but it hurts me to say that I'll be pulling for Cornell this week. I can't root against CJ Kirst, and I do think that that's the most talented team in the country. And I'm wondering if you think Richmond, has a shot to potentially shock the world this weekend.
Yeah, I think they have a shot. I think one thing that's encouraging for them is even seeing, look, they shouldn't be surprised. Like they only lost to a goal by them. They blew a 3 or 4 goal lead earlier in the season. So I think it's either going to be Richmond squeaking one out by a goal or two, or Cornell wins by 5+. I don't think there's that much of a middle ground. I think if you're Richmond, you feel really good about your defense, and second scoring defense in the country, and then Hunter Smith matching up on CJ Kirst. He's only gotten better since earlier in the season, and playing with more confidence probably than ever, coming off of covering Duffy last weekend. So, that's where I think it's going to be really interesting. But again, I think what Cornell has going for them is that, they've got so many weapons. They move the ball so well. Those guys are so unselfish. That's where I think you could see a guy like Michael Long put 4 home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I think of some of these other teams, when I think of Georgetown, when I think of even Notre Dame this year, Penn State, some of these other teams in the quarterfinals, I don't think they have the offensive depth that Cornell has and that Princeton has. And so if your top threat gets neutralized, like if an Aiden Carroll gets neutralized, we're talking about a different game, like who else is going to step up, and produce against a really stingy defense? That's where I think a Cornell, again, guys at the midfield, can really step in there and make an impact. And you're gonna see in the quarterfinals, you're gonna see a guy who, all of a sudden has 3 legit goals, and they're not the top 3 scoring option, because this is when guys step up.
Exactly. And I know you gotta wrap it up short, so I got a few just quick questions for you. Just one piece of advice for the guys left in the tournament. You've been in those shoes. You've walked those exact steps. What's the best advice you can give them, like going into this weekend, and if they win, going into Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah, my best advice is you have to soak it in. You there are no guarantees that you're going to get back to this weekend, to get back to quarterfinal weekend. And it's easy to think, like, again, I can say, like, coming off my first 2 years of college, like, I thought I was going to 4 Final Fours and had a chance to win 4 titles, and just every year it's so hard to do that. So one, soak that in and enjoy that. And then 2, like, leave everything out on the field. Those are, I know some of that is cliche, but it couldn't be more true. And when you're sitting here, like us chopping it up, when we hang up and retire the cleats, you're always going to be able to hold on to those moments. So make them count.
I love it. And then, just out of curiosity, are you still Team James, by the way?
I'm always Team James, easily.
Love it. Just wanted to make sure. There are some of my sources were making sure. He's got the dab going out there.
Shout out to the Team James squad. If they're listening, they'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure to get that over to them. And then before you head off here, who do you got winning it all? There's 8 teams left. Only one's gonna race it. Who's that Deemer Class? Pick to win it all.
Yeah, I think I think this year I've got Maryland.
Wow, inevitable.
I think the defense and the senior Tendy and the coaching, I think it gets them over the edge this year. I think last year they just didn't have enough horses, and I think while they were really strong, Notre Dame just had too much firepower, on the offensive side, and kind of felt like a little bit of destiny for them. I think defensively they're even better, and I just think that they're going to be well seasoned to make a push.
I love it. I love it. I believe McNaney is 3 for 3 getting to the championship as a starter. I haven't had anyone fact check me on that, but I'm almost positive that is the case. So I do have Cornell, but I'm happy someone else is seeing the vision with that Maryland team as well. I know for Maryland fans it's not crazy, and I know for real lacrosse fans it's not crazy, but for a lot of casual people out there, they just look at the bracket and think Cornell's going to just walk right through it. And although I hope that happens, it's just not going to be that easy. There's a lot of fucking behemoths in the way. But with that being said, man, I really appreciate your time hopping on. If you have anything for me before you sign off or any parting messages, feel free. And for anyone out there, tap in with First Class Lacrosse, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, hop in on the podcast. They're doing some really good stuff out there. And like we said, if you're a sicko and you're not tuned in there, you're missing out, because they're getting into the nitty gritty, and that's where you're really gonna hear that breakdown of lacrosse.
Yeah, we've got some good stuff for the sickos out there. So we've got the content needs you're looking for.
That is
Thanks
awesome.
for having me, man. This was awesome.
Yes, sir, Deemer. No problem at all. Whenever you're good, feel free to slide off. I'll stay on and wrap it up, and we'll chat soon. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Enjoy the games.
Yes, sir, man. You as well, Deemer.
See ya.
Deemer Class, everybody. Deemer Class. What a guy. Stand-up guy. Hops on the pod, chops it up, breaks down the game for you so well. It was an honor to have him on. To my Duke sources out there, sources with an S, I appreciate you guys. Team James. I'm going to join. I'm going to bring myself in as an honorary Team James member. If you're still listening, hit the little dab. For anyone else out there listening who doesn't know what it is, you will never know. I will never crack. But it's super cool that he was able to come on and just, it's awesome to talk about the game with different people, to get different perspectives, especially someone who just has so much experience on the field like Deemer. It makes it just like a good hang for Nest, and I would hope a good listen for you guys, where you can really just hear like a former, legend talk about the game of lacrosse. I forgot to get into some of the professional lacrosse stuff I want to get into with him, but we're short on time. People are busy. Nest is busy. I'm sneaking out of work a couple minutes early just to get this episode in. So if I get fired from my job, my other job, this is your guys' fault. For the listeners, this is on you. But no, it's been fun. Again, DMs are open, Twitter's open. You can always give me suggestions, ideas, questions, guest suggestions, whatever you need. But we're going to keep bringing it. We're going to keep bringing action to you. I'm going to work on getting some clips out to you guys. I think, this is an official announcement. I will be putting it out there. We're looking for some help on the back end with some social clips, some graphics, and just some basic editing. Nothing crazy. That will be unpaid, because, like we famously say on this podcast, we don't get paid to do this. We do this for the love of the game. I do this because I love you guys. But hopefully one day, when there's millions and millions of people tuned into the sport of lacrosse, we'll be sitting on the moon together as a group. All the fans will be eating. But we're looking for help. Ness is looking for some help. Dukes and Jordy are looking for some help. And appreciative of those guys, as always. Going to get Dukes on soon. Again, he's getting his new job started up. I'm working a new job. Jordy's got twins on the way. Jordy's got kids coming. His wife is pregnant. Great family over there in the, just that Delaware County grit, that Springfield pride. So they will be back in due time. But for now, I'm just excited to keep giving you Nest. If you hate it, fuck you. If you love it, I love you. But I always have a lot of fun coming on here and just speaking to the guest and at the end when I get to just stare into my own soul and I'm just yelling at myself. That's when it gets really special. I'm sure the neighbors probably love when I'm just screaming to myself because the conversation never ends. At least when I talk to one person, it's like a back and forth. Like my voice is piercing through the walls, and theirs is like nice and calm, like this. If you're listening, you probably can't hear me. But no, I'm bringing it like boom, like a fucking freight train coming through. Like Nick Lagunowich laying out the Del Barton goalie this week. Shout out the Chatham Cougars. Shout out the boys. We just had Coach Scarpello on, Christian Scarpello of the Philadelphia Water Dogs, and he's got those Chatham Cougars buzzing. They lose a heartbreaker to Del Barton, number 7 team in the country. Delby always gets it done. But when I was at that game, it might have been the happiest I've been leaving a loss, watching a loss, whatever you want to call it, because that Chatham team is really good. Those boys are buzzing. They got some young studs, this Nick Lagunowich kid, Shep Boyd. These guys are going to be household names in college. I've been around the game long enough where just watching them just for a couple games, I have no doubt in my mind that these kids are going to be superstars. And you got to tip your cap to Del Barton. They're loaded every year. They got tons of guys, just tons of talent, depth. They've always been the number 1 team in the state for a reason. There's a reason they win the Morris County title almost every year. Heartbreakers for Chatham every other year. But that's high school lax with Nest. For all you burners out there who are chirping me for going to the game, I wish I could walk outside with you right now and show you where this game was played. They were playing in my front yard. The game was played at my house. Could not have been closer. And I'll always support the Chatham boys. But I didn't know there was a limit on being able to go to watch lacrosse game, an age limit. It was fun. It was good. And check out my Twitter for just the biggest hit ever. At the high school level, I couldn't believe it. I was field side. This Lagunowich kid he killed. The Tendy never saw him. He got killed. He was asleep on the ground, just full fencing pose. He stayed in the game. That's a gritty guy, gritty Tendy. I never am gonna come on here and slander goalies. Not even the Delby goalie, and I hate Del Barton, but like you gotta love Tendies, especially a guy that gets his fucking helmet blown off. And he gets back up and hops in the cage and just immediately starts seeing shots. So it was fun. Again, shout out Scarpello. He's doing great things there. I'm happy he's the coach of my high school team. And I'm happy he got to come on. And I think that's really it. I think I got almost all my questions in with Deemer. I've been doing my research for the fellas. Listen, I'm not coming on here. You can't just come on and free ball it every time. The first time I came on here solo, I just got on, just clicked record. I was like, fuck it, we're live. It was electric. I loved it, but definitely a little chaotic. I'm trying to be a little more organized. Not my forte. I'm more of a just, fuck it, let's do it type of guy, if you haven't noticed. And, so I'm going to go, shove 27 edibles in my mouth, watch the Dallas Stars tonight, and hopefully we will be, next time we're talking, next time this episode's live, hopefully the Dallas Stars in the Western Conference Finals for Nest. That's why you tune in. You tune in for the hockey talk at the end. I know Jordy would love to talk hockey right now. He'd probably somehow spin it into a Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl parade because he's a dick sucker, and he loves the Eagles, which, you have to respect. But it's the Stars. It's the Dallas Stars here. I love my Stars. I love Mike Madonna. I love Marty Turco. I love the OGs. I love the Otter. Oh, God, man, I love Dallas. I'm going to let you guys go. Have an excellent weekend, and I'll be talking to you guys again before Memorial Day weekend, whether it's solo, with Dukes, with Jordy, whatever we hop in and do. But we're gonna make something happen, 100%. And let's go Cornell, baby. It's time, CJ. Come on. Love you guys. We'll be keeping it low to high till the day we die.